You like comics? You bet we do. How about artwork? Yeah, we fucking love that too. You like movies? Whether they are old or new. How about streaming? We watch that fucking shit, it's true. But it's comic book art that gets us all fired up for the all-time great. So let's buckle up. Hear me out, I'ma tell you how it all goes down on the Blacklist. Underground.
Welcome to the Blacklist Underground, brought to you by Ideal Organic CBD, starring our favorite artist, Zach Howard, creator of the hit series. Hey, Zach!
How's it going?
Good. Zach created Wild Blue Yonder, as well as the illustrator of The Cape, Hellboy, Judge Dredd, TMNT, and too many others to mention. I'm your host, enthusiastic comic book aficionado, JC Washburn. And each episode, we choose a comics legend to ink a comic book panel of. And this week's giant, who's getting blacklisted, is none other than our favorite, Frank Miller.
Yes.
This one we're going to focus on Dame to Kill For, and specifically that deadly Little Miho.
Yes, we did. Who did we do? We did Marv the first time because I was talking about how much Sin City meant to me and kind of changed my life.
I picked this image from The Big Fat Kill, and like this one has stuck out to me since the first time I saw it. I mean, Frank is just such a master at doing iconic imagery. And I had a crazy thought that I haven't mentioned to you yet.
What's up?
But I reread Dame to Kill For last night in preparation.
Good man.
Last time I read Hard Goodbye on our imaginary episode that never...
It was a great episode, everyone. Epic.
It was, and it'll grow in its legend as we get older. This is going to sound crazy, but isn't Miho kind of like Sin City's Boba Fett?
Oh, interesting. I guess so. Except less doofy.
Well, I mean, she's like just this. Like all we know is that she's good at killing. She never says anything. She's got the coolest weapons. And just shows up and gashes people and slashes people and is untouchable.
Yeah.
And so she I think Miho's kind of taken on a mythology of her own. She's just this mysterious character that everybody's latched onto. But it's just, that's Frank Miller in a nutshell, especially at this point in his prime, in his cartooning prime.
Yeah. His little ninja girl here, Miho, she popped out to me right away. I don't know. He has a great ability to mix different types of sexuality with violence, obviously, which is kind of the theme of Sin City. It appears that kind of hyper noir, and it's weird how he went with this little ninja girl. Of course, he always seems to blend in ninjas, weapon, samurai, whatever the hell, from Wolverine on. So that's not new.
And even Daredevil. Remember, he integrated, stick and the hand.
The hand. I almost called him the foot because I was just drawing TMNT.
Which is yeah. I mean, the whole TMNT story is basically a parody of the Miller issues of Daredevil.
That's what it started out as, huh?
Yeah, but Frank Miller doesn't go anywhere without bringing a few ninjas. And,
but I guess to my point, though, he's able to inject, as you say, this girl doesn't speak. She doesn't do anything. She's just loyal. And when you need somebody dead, there's no better person to have on your team, right? So,
yeah, and you're right about the sexuality element. I read Dame to Kill For last night. It must have been the first time I read it since it came out.
Wow.
And
has some of the best lines in it. That
book. But so I didn't remember any of it. It was literally like reading it for the first time last night. Or actually,
lucky you! I've probably read it 100 times.
I know this is your Bible.
Yes.
And in my case, I'm more of my Bible is pretty much Dark Knight and Year One.
I thought it was an Applebee's menu.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody has a favorite Frank Miller story, and it changes. Sometimes it's his Born Again stuff, his Born Again story.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I vacillate. but you're way more on the Sin City side than I am. I mean, I love Sin City, but like you've got like just a nuclear love for Sin City.
Yeah, I can't not. I love it, warts and all. And I guess because it was the time in my life I needed that potent. I needed to be kind of rattled, like grabbed by the little lapel and shook a little bit.
Yeah.
And at the lowest point in my life, and finding comic books again, and the first thing I found was Sin City, and already having a profound love. Frank Miller was one of my all-time favorites ever. Elektra Lives, Daredevil, Ronin. You could just throw a dart at his library and find greatness for that time period. So, we have my first story, which I'll save again for when we have a guest, being introduced to Sin City and why it means so much to me. However, this image, we're looking for a new image to draw rather than Marv. And though people didn't see me ink that Marv, and people seemed to like it, I was very happy with how it turned out. I didn't just want to do a recap of our last episode. I'd rather, kind of meander about the love of Frank Miller. However, this image does matter to me because after I failed out of college, imagine that.
Happens to the best of us.
So I failed out of college my first year. Definitely did not want to be in college at all. All my buddies joined the military, and I got convinced to go to. My dad didn't want me in the military, and so I just went and didn't really go to school. I was just kind of there. However, so I had a bad go in the Marines. I was doing really well, but I got sick, and they did a lung test on me one day after PTing, and I failed the fucking lung test. And all within like 2 days, I went from being a Marine to on my way out of the Marines. I have that's when I started really finding out I have a atrocious immune system and have bad lungs and scar tissue in there and all sorts of stuff. But anyways, so, this fat 05 Navy guy comes out of Balboa Hospital and tells me I'm unfit to be a Marine now. It's after I went into, it was a crazy, crazy thing. They hooked me up to this, like a Kira machine.
Wow.
Like they put Tatsu in, and they start, have this like mask on, and they start pumping these chemicals into the mask that simulate wartime possible chemicals on the battlefield or whatever. And like I did well the first three, is either the third or fourth one. Within like a second, I was in anaphylaxis.
Whoa. I
couldn't breathe, couldn't anything, and I was panicking like at all. I couldn't take one molecule of air in. And so they give me a shot of epinephrine, the people, all the shit, and I get the therapy and I can breathe again. Of course, my heart's like racing, and they have me wait in the waiting room, which isn't really like a civilian waiting room. It's just a closet with a TV playing MTV up top. And then this fat Navy doctor, I never not scored a 300 on my PT, maxed it out. And this dude that couldn't even probably get off the ground if he fell down is telling me I'm unfit to be a Marine. Really sad time in my life. So I had another failure to deal with. Not that I had a choice, my lungs are my lungs, but crazy time. In the Marines, I was involved as the lead witness in a trial. I had to go back when I was inactive, but I was still a Marine, and I was the lead witness, and I did this week-long trial.
I saw that movie. Was that the Tom Cruise movie? You Can't Handle the Truth?
Yes, but the thing is that the twist was I could handle the truth. So I had to do this nutty trial with like fucking drill instructors screaming in the middle of court at each other and shit, and officers calming them down. It was madness. Anyways, so I get home, not even home. My parents now, my dad's commander of Waterways Experiment Station, which is in butt-fucked Vicksburg, Mississippi. I have nowhere to go. So my dad says I can live in his basement as long as I'm working, blah, blah, blah. So I get a construction job in Vicksburg, fucking Mississippi, which if people want to know about Vicksburg, Mississippi, imagine I don't know, a blister-riddled inner lining of a butthole and turn it into a state. And there you go. There's Mississippi for you. So, and you guys can fight me about it. I don't give a shit. I lived there for 5 years. I'll say what I want.
I think that's the one state I haven't sold land in is in Mississippi.
I don't even know. Well, you gotta. I think they trade in shells and trinkets still. I don't know. They can't read contracts either. But anywho, there's good people everywhere. People. I'm just giving Mississippi shit. But Mississippi didn't have any comic book shop, no nothing. This is Vicksburg. It's basically a pretentious little Mississippi town right on the Mississippi River. And so I didn't know what to do. I'd never been to a place like I've lived all over the world, and I've never been to a place as shitty as Mississippi. I didn't know how to adapt to the culture, anything like that.
Except for the good people of Mississippi who we love.
Except for, well, there's Chris Reed. Shout out Chris Reed. There's always good people everywhere. You kind of learn that as you travel. There's better places than other places and better cultures, or cultures that you can identify better with. But it's a low batting average for Mississippi as far as quality. So anyways, enough shitting on Mississippi. You guys can send me hate mail later. I love it. I was just driving. I used to drive around because I had downtime in the shitty town, and I was 19-ish, 20, thinking I should go back to college, but I'd failed out the first time. So I was saving up to go to community college and work in construction. And I used to go to Books A Million in Jackson, Mississippi, which is about an hour drive to this. And there was actually a little dinky comic book store there, but I didn't know that yet. It wasn't in the yellow pages or anything that I could find. Yeah, this was pre-internet, all you fucking young fucks. The before time.
Yep, we had to do it the hard way. We had to do it the hard way in the 90s.
You had to search for shit, man.
80s and 90s.
So I stopped in, I was an avid reader, so I stopped in Books A Million, and it's like, if you like books, Books A Million was kind of like a porn shop anyways, Yeah. By the way, you ever notice, do you have this issue? I do. Whenever I go into a bookstore and I smell the new books, and I don't know what it is, I immediately have to take like a profound Chipotle's level shit. Yeah. Yes. What is that? The new book smell. I have to go. Thank God Books A Million had the best bathrooms, dude.
They did. Yeah. I've had the same thing.
What the fuck is that?
Let's do a study. There's nothing stopping us. We could do a study.
Fans, write in. Do you have to poop when you go into a new bookstore or an old bookstore? It's just the book smell. I don't know what it is. Dude, but you're like, Books A Million. You're all happy. And then you just got to hold your butthole and do the crab walk to the fucking bathroom as fast as you can.
Yep.
And then after you take care of business, you can go peruse books. Feeling like a new person, new lease on life.
You voided your bowels. You're now open to new experiences.
You're an empty, open person.
Right.
I just walked by, and lo and behold, they had a comic book section, and it was like way up on this shelf. Like I'm not a little dude. I had to like reach up for this stuff, but I turned, and the first comic I saw was this fucking cover, which is number 4 of The Big Fat Kill. I didn't know who the fucking character was. Well, I guess I did, because I had read the big A Dame to Kill For before I went into the Marines, like right before. But I just stood and stared at it, and I bought it. I didn't know what was going on in the story, but it's a Frank Miller story, so you're enveloped like immediately. He like grabs you by the fucking nuts and drags you along, whether you want to or not. Luckily, that's what I'm into, so it was great. That's
one thing to point out about Frank Miller. I mean, he's as a draftsman, he's not Buscema or Garcia Lopez or somebody like that, but he draws better covers than they do. He as a graphic designer, Frank Miller is one of the top guys
of all time.
I mean, just his graphic sense is so much higher than so many of the great draftsmen, that he came up with.
It's profound what he's able to harness look at this, no background, no nothing. But I was just staring, and me and my work, I'm a background freak.
Oh yeah.
I'm a fucking freak. And here, one of my favorite artists or storytellers of all time, much less drew an image with 12 lines. I'll turn it into 1200, but and I just can't stop fucking staring at it. Well, she has little shitty dots for eyes, and I can't stop staring at her fucking face. So there's something magic. This guy harnesses something from the fucking universe that nobody else does.
That's the big takeaway. I mean, not just as a pure storyteller. I was as I reread the story, as I reread Dame to Kill For this morning. It doesn't have the same punch as Hard Goodbye. That first
the first volume.
It's he's sort of finding his rhythm. You know what I mean? He's finding it's a different rhythm than the first series.
He's starting to expand on the world. He has to build a world out of this, I think.
Exactly. He's getting into the world building, and it's just a reminder. As I'm reading the story, I'm like, this guy, stories just flow out of this person, and that's true of a lot of people. A lot of people can punch out a lot of stories, but has just such a natural way of drawing you into the story and making you interested in the story, knowing when to punch you, knowing when to kiss you.
Exactly.
He knows he's just the most manipulative comic book artist that ever walked. And but
interesting phraseology there, and I really dig it. His stuff is it's like Led Zeppelin music to me. Like, remember the first time you heard Led Zeppelin, like Kashmir? You just fucking stop what you're doing and you start listening. It doesn't matter.
One of my buddies growing up starts blasting down the highway, pops in Led Zeppelin. I'm like 14 years old, washing dishes at the restaurant. He's one of the chefs. I'm just like, whoa, I don't even know what's going on. But that's the same thing. You open up it's the same experience as opening up a Frank Miller comic. I mean, it's like, it just blasts you in the face.
It's seminal, man. There's a clear delineation between the first time not knowing this exists and knowing it exists.
Right.
There's a moment in time when you find Frank Miller, or you find the crazy thing is, you can be like blah about Frank Miller, and then he writes something like Sin City, and then your whole world changed. Literally, my whole world changed from that day forward. Obviously, I told you that story. I joined the Marines, cleaned up my life, blah, blah, blah. But I was still after I failed out of the Marines, or my lungs did, I had huge depression issues and all this. I was just working, and I'd do construction for 10 hours and then lift weights for 3 hours. I was one of those fucking nuts. Just burn the weakness out because I hated myself. But I just kept reading Sin City and stories of that ilk. And one thing I liked about The Dame to Kill For and The Big Fat Kill, to your point, they don't have that fucking visceral punch that the original Sin City that just hits you like a nuclear bomb in the chest, and you have to sit down and read it backwards and forwards. It doesn't have that. But one thing I did love I love Marv. Always love Marv, and he's my favorite. But Dwight, everything about Dwight was, at that moment, was my life. It was like a shaved head, a man with too much discipline to avoid life, really. Yep. Insulate.
He's trying. It's almost like The Unforgiven. He's trying to live the right life. He hasn't been drinking. He's behaving himself, and then he gets sucked back in. And she turns out to be a dame to kill for.
Ava, yes. My first dog, by the way, I named her Ava. Not because she was a temptress, but just because that's my favorite book. Old Ava. She's the best dog of all time. But
it is funny to compare the first and the second, because in the first one you're living inside of Marv's mind.
See,
so you kind of have your whole perspective on the book is you're basically living as Marv,
this warped binary character, right?
But then they bring you into Dame to Kill For, and Marv is a secondary character.
But he works even better in a lot of ways. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
I'll let you continue.
Well, he almost enters, like when you see him from somebody else's perspective, he becomes almost sort of a charming caricature.
He really is. He's this lovable, affable guy that's like, hey, if you're buddies with him, you now have the best friend on earth.
Right.
Literally the best friend you could possibly ever have. And if you're enemies with him, he's going to drink a beer and steal your coat.
And poke out your eye.
You know, so I guess what I identified more with Dwight. And I actually felt jealousy at first because I'd loved Marv so much. But, man, Dwight was me, dude. And just this hard dude that was too fucked up and had taken so much damage that he forgot to live. He just reduces himself to this almost like machine state. Yeah. You know, like, I'm hard, nothing gets in. And so I really identified with the story. And speaking of that, one of the best monologues in the entire Dame to Kill For is when Dwight comes back and he's like, okay, I know who I'm getting. He goes to get Marv at the bar. Yep. And Marv is just torturing some motherfucker, like mooing at the waitress or something like that. And just while drinking a beer, you know, Marv's not really concerned about anything. No. You know, and Dwight's just watching him and he's like, he feels sympathy for Marv. He goes something to the effect of Marv was born in the wrong time. He should be on a battlefield at home swinging an axe into some asshole's face or something. And there's something about that statement because I always felt like I just don't belong in this stupid kind of superficial world. Not that it, you know, since we've had society, I'm sure there's always been issues with that. But that line always stuck with me because I identified with Dwight. But in that moment, I felt like Dwight was kind of describing me. Not that I'm the badass Marv is, but I had this kind of directionless life that I just didn't feel like I fit in any fucking where. Yeah. And I wasn't old enough to realize you kind of define your own reality. You know, so that book just does a lot to me, man.
Well, the next line is even more fun because after Marv, you know, beats the crap out of those guys who are picking on the bartender, he turns around and goes, "Oh, Dwight, I didn't see you there." Like, Dwight's been sitting there the whole time, and Marv is beating the crap out of these guys and taking care of business.
Beautiful, charming moment, you know, and that's the beauty of Frank Miller's when he would put this kind of affable humor into his characters. And not all of them can. Dwight can't have any happiness in him. He just can't. No, that's not the character.
And also, like, they use the seductress Ava. What guy hasn't had that woman in their life?
And Ava, there you go. That you pined for and you unrequited love, or you got manipulated by. Yeah, I'll let you talk.
You know, that woman who can bend you to her will. That, you know, she'll change reality to whatever it needs to be to serve her at that moment. You know, I mean, you know, Frank Miller writes that character with such clarity. I mean, you're reading it and thinking back on your life, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, who broke your heart, Frank?
I think Frank I would love to get him, you know, on one of these episodes and just be like, what woman, you know, made you write this story? Because for the love of God,
this didn't come from nothing.
I don't think you could even write this story today. I mean, it's just, it would be considered pure misogyny.
Well, the book kind of is, and it's as goofy as it sounds. This sort of noir that he's doing is kind of part of the personality of the book. The violence is over the top. The sexuality is over the top. And I know some people get, Frank, you know, it's just tits and boobs. And there are Frank Miller drawings that are just that. But if that's what you're reducing it to, you're missing the majesty. Whether you like it or not, he needs that environment to tell the story of these characters. And
And it's real. Every page is relatable.
To me, at least, you know, I know a lot of people. I led a weird, fucked up life, so I'm already weird as shit to people. But yeah, I don't know. I identify with Frank Miller stories, not because I used to drink heavily and murder people for coats, but well, not for coats, but there's just something about it. It just, the music he makes, like, it's on the same frequency as the fucking marrow in my bones, man. And Frank will always have that position for me, I think. I have a shrine built in my soul for him, because there's about an 8-year period where anything he did, even a fucking interview, I couldn't get through the week without reading it or just absorbing it or whatever. He was that important of a creator to me at the lowest point in my life. And his stories gave me power and passion up in my brain, which was the start of me and my journey being an artist and a storyteller. It all goes back to Frank Miller and the potency of his stories. So I do get people have trouble with some of the hyper noir and sexuality of it, but he's not trying to hide that in there. He's not just drawing Power Girl with a boob window. You know, it's something else. So you have to separate it for what it is rather than what you want it to be or what you've seen of other people doing something with, you know, large-breasted women and violence. This is unique into itself.
Well, you know how I like to gather up quotes for our little gatherings here.
See, shoot, hit us.
But it's funny. He makes a spirit reference. He says, it was said Daredevil grew up in Hell's Kitchen, an amazing name for a neighborhood. But that opened a Pandora's box of all the crime stuff I wanted to do. And I borrowed liberally from Will Eisner's The Spirit and turned Daredevil into a crime comic. And then, you know, so I read that quote and I sort of looked at that, you know, in comparison with Sin City. And the funny thing about Sin City, you know, which is so different from The Spirit, is that he subtracted the hero from Sin City. There are no heroes in Sin City.
Literally none.
You know, he subtracted the good guy from The Spirit, and this is what you get.
There's survivors and people that flourished by illegal means and people that just survived within it. That's kind of the world he set up there. It's really interesting that it's so simplistic, but it's just brilliant, you know, and it doesn't feel like Daredevil. It doesn't feel like Ronin. It doesn't feel like Miho, doesn't feel like Elektra just warmed over, you know?
No, and he's got very elaborate backstories, you know, like Miho's about to stab him in the back and it's revealed that he saved her life.
And she pulls it. Yeah. When he's with the twins, right? Right.
That's the currency in Sin City. Oh,
loyalty.
Loyalty. You know,
and debt.
Loyalty, he could have. I could be dead if not for him. All right, I'll let him live for a few more hours.
No, it's the best silence panel of Sin City a Day McKill for.
Which one?
Is when they go back to fuck shit up and Dwight thinks he's saving Ava, and he has Marv just beating the shit out. Yeah, go beat everybody up.
Yeah.
Hey, you're the guy that beat up my pal. And so Marv's just fucking people. I like how everybody's a tough guy till they meet Marv.
Right.
And Marv doesn't even think about it. You know, that's the beautiful part. He's just being Marv. And no, like the tough bodyguard that can fuck anybody up can't last a moment with Marv. Not even a second. Well, he just walks right through him.
Even Dwight takes a good 6 or 7 bullets. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, not in his heart too. That's the great thing about the hyper noir. Yeah. If you have revenge in your heart, you can't die yet. Right. Yes. And there's a beauty about that. And Frank pulled it off, of course, exceptionally well.
Well, that's one of the things that we talked about in the last episode was that, you know, if you grew up reading comic books, you know, seeing somebody get shot 6 times on a piece of paper, you know, when it's drawn by somebody, it's not the same thing as seeing it on the screen. And when you see actual human beings encountering that kind of violence on the screen,
It's more tangible.
That was maybe one of the more brilliant things about the film, was that they kept that stuff intact.
They had successes in it, most definitely. The films they're under their own. There's some successful parts, some parts that make me groan.
Yeah.
I know Frank talked about being a purist in the film application of Sin City, which sounds good, but I like what he was doing in spirit, but film and comic books are way different. So a lot of that dialogue, I think, needed to be expanded and adapted.
Yeah.
But he was doing one for one almost everywhere. And again, from an artistic point of view, I commend you. But, again, it's different media. So you have to approach it slightly different. How do I preserve this feeling and story or moment within a movie? You got to figure that out. And I think in the fervor of wanting it to be just like the comic book, I think they lost a moment to adapt it for the media that they were using. And
I agree.
That's a very humble critique for me, or a reluctant critique for me, but it's just the reality. The books fist fuck the movies. Not that there aren't cool things about the movies.
That's another Miller quote. He says, I don't do a comic book thinking there's a movie. I just want it to be a good comic book, as good a comic book as it can be.
Oh, so completely different than almost every fucking creator I know nowadays.
Yeah, he is not thinking about these things in terms of films.
And that's why they're pure and they excel in the medium. Everybody wants a twist, a kick. How do you visualize this? Well, my fucking agent's always like, well, that's big budget, so don't think big budget. And I'm like, how about I just think about a story that I really fucking like? They made Game of Thrones into a movie, dude. The budgets don't really matter, especially green screens nowadays. You can find ways to make shit.
The rights to Sin City have returned to Miller.
Yeah.
So he can,
Good.
I believe they're going to do a TV series.
No.
That's what I read.
Oh my God, I need a time machine.
Netflix or something.
I need a time machine. Don't tell me that.
I'm just glad it belongs to Miller and not Harvey Weinstein.
Or
that's
Disney.
That's who had it, was Weinstein.
It'd be Marv versus Boba Fett. No, they team up if Disney owned this.
That would be epic. I'd actually watch that.
Marv has sex with Boba Fett every night, whether he or she wants it.
Well, they've got, actually, if you think about it, they've got Weinstein-esque characters all throughout Sin City.
Yes. The way they look, the way they act.
They got all these pustules all over them. They're abusive to women.
It's really interesting, man. The world he created. It's very polarizing. You're either team evil or just trying to live you're trying to exist in a world where team evil fucking owns everything.
That's another quote. He says, I'm a comic book artist, so I think to myself, what do I like to draw? I like to draw hot chicks, fast cars, and cool guys in trench coats. So that's what I write about.
Well, there you go. Know thyself, right?
But the thing is, he's such a natural that he can draw spandex people. He can draw Batman. He's such a natural. He's just, you put a pencil in Frank Miller's hand and put some paper in front of him, and he's going to draw something or write a story for you or create a comic that is going to relate. That is going to be, first of all, it's going to be really good, and it's everything he's ever drawn has stood the test of time. We're talking about this. Christ, Sin City's what, 20 years ago?
90. The original one was like 91 or 93.
Wow.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, I got to digress. My favorite scene with Marv ever was in Dame to Kill For. And it kind of launched this whole thing where Marv was driving and talking about country music while Dwight's dying in the back of his car. And he's driving down like Mulholland Drive mountain passes doing 80 miles an hour and shit. It was great. But right up to that, after, Marv is, you're the guy who beat the shit out of my buddy or hurt my friend. And he goes and jumps at the bodyguard. It's whatever for a bit, and then you come back when Dwight gets shot or whatever, and Marv looks up like at the sound, and he's wearing the bodyguard's hat with blood all over.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite scenes is when he's wearing the bodyguard's hat. So, man, this guy's just fucking amazing. So, yeah, if you don't like Frank Miller, I don't like you. And I'm not saying that I don't know him as a person. I only know him as a seminal creator. And yeah, you can say, oh, his books aren't what they used to be. Well, yeah, you know, Jimmy Page doesn't play Led Zeppelin music like he used to either. So life goes on. But that being said, you have to recognize whether he's still capable of doing what he did or not. And that's left up to the individual. It is all important for a person to acknowledge greatness when it happens. Right. You don't have to like Walter Payton, but if you don't fucking understand why they call him the sweetness, I ain't watching football with you.
Right.
You know?
I mean, so it's kind of like, it reminds me of the, you know, they keep these records of who's sold the most albums of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got like the Eagles, greatest hits. You've got Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. You've got Michael Jackson, Thriller.
There we go.
You know, you've got, so there's a handful of them that sort of that are on the list. Well, guess what? They stopped making records.
So
none of those that will never change. You know, we'll be dead, and Fleetwood Mac, Rumors will still be the number 3 best-selling album of all time. Nothing's ever going to change because there aren't records anymore. And you know, if you take, I mean, Frank Miller basically, you know, blew out the doors, did Dark Knight, did Dark Knight,
Ronin, then Dark Knight,
did Ronin, Dark Knight, year 1, and he did his work with Sienkiewicz. He just laid down the gauntlet, and to this day, it's really hard to say that that's been improved on.
Not really. You can find even imperfections in it, and it's still better than anything out there.
Yeah. I mean, because it's so seminal, because all of his work is so seminal, it's just analyzed and deconstructed, and people talk about it. And there's entire, you know, Facebook groups and websites dedicated to deconstructing Frank Miller's work and why did he write that? And is he a misogynist, or or did he change the story because he was influenced by Watchmen or X, Y, and Z? It doesn't matter. He drew the best comic books ever.
He reinvented Batman. And not only that, he kind of reinvented the genre. He forced everybody to grow the fuck up. And you know, it's seminal. Dark Knight. There's before and after superhero comics. You know, obviously Watchmen is involved in that decision, but it's just so seminal. It's just before and after. It's like a volcano erupting.
Well, you've got your big, you've got Kirby, the comic book gods, the storytellers, the cartoonists who are going to be on the Mount Rushmore of comic books forever.
Eisner, Kirby.
Frank Miller's right at the top.
I agree. He's, again, his work stands by itself. It fucking stands by itself. There's no one like him. No one. How many black and white comics sold before Sin City? That whole thing with the rush with black and white comics where TMNT was created and whatever, the Intergalactic Ninja, Zen, or all those types of comic books that got popular. Obviously, TMNT is the king, but that ship had passed, man. And he came back, and you're death if you had a black and white comic. You weren't even considered professional for the most part in the United States. You were like up and coming with your stupid black and white comic. And then here he comes out and just shows you, oh, you don't like black and white comics? Watch this contrast, asshole. I'm going to fuck your mouth with this drawing. Yeah, and he did. That was the whole first Sin City, was Marv fucking your mouth with images.
It was. And
that was the best plot point of the story, too.
Yeah. I mean, those pages are hidden. Nobody's actually seen them. other than Lynn Varley. You know, they're in a vault somewhere.
To her chagrin, huh?
Somebody will buy those pages. Eventually, they'll be on the market. You know,
Yes.
When times get hard. But no, I remember. And how cool was it? I mean, that's coming out at the same time as Hellboy. You know, John Byrne was doing his Next Men creator.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to that point. You know, coming out at the older creators doing kind of like their own thing was kind of fun to watch, right?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, because I had already been spoiled as a kid on Simonson and Byrne and Jim Starlin. And
yeah, the great
like
draftsman.
Yeah, I mean, then you know everything became Image. You know, so all those Image comic books came out, and none of which I had any interest in. I just was I saw the kids, you know, were rushing for the glowing covers and stuff, but I knew even then I knew good from bad.
Oh, shut up! Your favorite book is Blood Wolf, asshole.
I still love Blood Wolf. Just if only for the
haircut or the great lines like "stink on poop."
So I mean, it just wasn't for me. Nothing against. I mean, I don't know. I just they just didn't seem even readable, and so
I get it.
And then okay, cool. So,
shout out to Sam Keith though, that rose above all that shit and made a seminal work.
Yeah, what beautiful line work that guy is capable of. But but then all of a sudden, okay, so Byrne says, all right, well, I'm gonna drop Next Men, and Miller comes out. He says, I'm gonna drop Sin City, and Art Adams comes out with Monkey Man and O'Brien, and Hellboy, of course, which has become an IP that stands up there with Turtles and the other Turtles and.
I've never heard of it. Good book.
Depends on who's drawing it. I like the ones that you do.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I forgot.
Matt Smith's pretty good too. We should see if we can get him on the show.
I did a con with Matt.
He's awesome.
Actually, I took over for Matt on Clockmaker.
No,
Jim Kruger. That's how I met Matt.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he's a boy.
Fun guy. Good writer too.
But so that was kind of interesting to me as a guy who Image wasn't doing anything for me, and all this, and even actually Simonson went off and did some stuff too, but not with those guys. I think he went to Bravura or somewhere else. I think he went back to Star Slammers and did that.
He did go back to Star Slammers because it was coming out. Literally, when I bought this fucking cover, I bought Star Slammers too.
Yeah.
He was doing that new redo of it or whatever with the new colors and everything.
Well, they reprinted the graphic novel, plus he did a handful of issues on top of that. And I had Star Slammers as a kid. You know, I had the graphic novel, of course, which his wife colored, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Cool.
She painted it. Those were Louise Simonson.
Wow.
But so there was sort of an alternative to Image, with all my favorite creators for just for like 10 minutes there. Oh, and Concrete. What am I thinking? They had Concrete was coming out as part of the Legend imprint. All these guys were under the Legend imprint.
Yeah, and it imploded, which I love. Mignola did the little icon for it. It was the Easter Island guys.
What do they call it? Legend. They called it Legend.
It was Legend, and it's either Mignola or Frank Miller. They're like, dude, I loved everything they did. Every creator was kicking ass. To your point, Concrete. I love Concrete. And Dark Horse Presents was red hot at the time, and Negative Burn was coming out, which was shit hot. I saw Phil Hester would be in there and stuff. And
Eddie Campbell was doing Bacchus.
Yes, and I got it, Eddie. My wife, for whatever reason, we got pretty close with Eddie Campbell there for a while. It was a lot of fun. But
he's brilliant.
Yeah, we got several pieces of his artwork. I think something from Hell, and then he did a personal sketch for my wife.
Oh, cool.
I got him hiding somewhere in my drawer of gems that you've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it was a creator moment, but to that point, I think it was either Mignola or Frank Miller that were talking about why did that fall apart, and he said, well, you put that many egos in one place, shit's going to implode. Right. I guess there's just too many strong opinions, or you know how that shit falls apart. Well, it's hard enough to keep two artists together, much less 6 legends,
Yeah, I guess by that argument, you have to kind of give Image props because they're still around.
Yes, they did a model, whether you love them or hate them, and I published through them. My first 2 series were through them.
Yeah,
they have a phenomenal model, man.
yeah. I mean,
So
those guys deserve their props.
whether you like it, hate it, like creators, dislike creators, editor, whatever the fuck, you got to give credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and countless good books have come from Image, not mine, folks.
But I have to say, you know, you're rereading Dame to Kill For was kind of like I said, I had completely forgotten the story, you know, and while I was reading it, I was even trying to reference it. Was it part of the movie, or did they do a Dame to Kill For movie?
I think they did, and I refused to watch it because I saw the first movie, and I didn't like Clive Owen's a decent actor, but him as Dwight was pathetic.
He is a good actor, I agree.
But he's not fucking Dwight. Whoever casted that needs to be fired immediately.
But who should be Dwight? Who would you cast?
I'm not good with actors. Shit.
Living or dead?
Oh my gosh. Living or dead. Yul Brynner. I'm Yul Brynner.
Bring back.
If you're seeing this, I'm dead from cancer, and I'm Dwight from Sin City.
That's right. Didn't he used to do the cigarette commercials?
Yeah, we're old enough. The youngins aren't going to remember that. That was the creepiest shit when you're a kid. Yul Brynner died, and then they did the anti-smoking campaign. Hi, I'm Yul Brynner. Ah!
If you're watching this commercial, I'm already dead.
If you're watching this commercial, I'm a fucking ghost.
Oh, poor Yul.
I've come to haunt you. Smoke, smoke, smoke.
There was a kid from my high school who was just a regular upper middle class kid. Went to a good college, and he had an opportunity one time to smoke crack. And he's like, I'm going to try this just to see what all the fuss is about. And he said before he had even finished inhaling the first hit, it was like a gigantic neon sign started going off in his head that said, "Where do I get more of this?
More.
I need more." Like he never smoked it again, but he said that the
pull was there.
The impulse, you know, which brings us back to Frank. You know, it's like I don't know what Frank got into, you know, in the last 20 years or so after he did Sin City and after his Hollywood stuff. I don't know if he was into the drink or to the booze or or too much partying in Hollywood or whatever it was, which I guess Neil Adams sort of pulled him out of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the story. I think
because I know he is very disillusioned in Hollywood, and that's how Sin City came back. He just wanted to do a book that he wanted to do. Yep. Had nothing to do with sale. Shit, it was put in Dark Horse Comic Presents because he thought it was just a shitty black and white book that was going to be 48 pages of a violent story, and a universe blossomed. I don't know, man. It felt magical back then where, you know, I'm probably a jaded shithead now, but it just feels like there's no magic anymore in the industry. It's just people trying and throwing shit against the wall. And, oh, did he do a zombie book and it was popular? I'll do a zombie book. And
yes.
Did this guy do this type of series and it's super popular? We're going to have a million. Fuck. I've probably seen 20 variations of Cola from Wild Blue Yonder hit. Yes. And I'm not even fucking popular. Imagine if I was Frank Miller popular, how many colas would be out there?
Well, that was that was the thing. You know, Frank had reached this peak, and he had kind of lost his way a little bit. And I guess he ran into Neil at a convention. And Neil Adams was sort of a father figure to Frank.
Interesting.
When Frank was a kid, he used to bring his samples to Continuity. and he would show up every month with new samples after he had been critiqued by Neil.
Cool.
And he finally showed up one day with his samples, and Neil looked at them and he looked at them and he looked at them, and he picked up the phone and he called, I don't know, Denny O'Neil or Dick Giordano or somebody. He said, "Okay, I got a kid. I'm sending him over right now. He's ready for work." And
cool.
So they had that kind of a relationship. Plus, of course, Neil had sort of revolutionized Batman in the 70s. You know,
period. He revolutionized dynamic draftsmanship in comics, period, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't find two more different artists than Frank Miller and Neil Adams.
Literally, huh?
Couldn't be more different. But I think Neil loomed pretty large in Frank's worldview. According to Neil, that was when Frank was sort of turned it around, and has been, and over the last 5 years or so has been, putting out books more regularly and doing a lot of writing and sort of turning back into the Frank Miller that we all knew and loved.
I know when he went to Hollywood, he was really disillusioned with, really unhappy, according to his interviews. He's really unhappy with the RoboCops and how there's one other movie. From his interviews, and I've always avoided meeting him because I love him so much, and I don't know what to expect. That's not a position I'm taking as far as who he is. I don't know Frank Miller. I just have had, as you well know, JC, some bad experiences with my heroes. So I don't meet them anymore if I truly respect somebody.
Yeah.
So just so now you can do that in the future. If I'm talking to you, I probably don't respect you, right?
Right.
But he said, it'd been like 2-3 years of him not even drawing.
Oh, wow.
And he came back and just wanted to tell his own story with no strings attached. And that's how Sin City happened from the lore I remember reading about.
And it's kind of crazy. It's almost like Jordan coming back from retirement and winning another title.
Kinda, but not only just winning a title, he was motherfucking Jordan still. Nuts in your face, defying gravity, lifting everyone. I mean, he lifted the whole medium, Frank Miller, again, with these seminal people that you can have great stories, but every once in a while there's a motherfucker that comes along that, again, there's life before and after, and that's what Sin City was for me. That's what Dark Knight was for me. Ronin, it just, my probably pound for pound, the best single comic book I've ever read is Elektra Lives. Just from start to finish, it's just one of the best potent stories of all time.
It's for me, I like Elektra Assassin better.
It's good, but it's very good. One of my favorites. But there's something about
Elektra Lives to me is so dreamy. It's almost too dreamy.
I get that. And maybe that's why I liked it. At the time, I was a very disillusioned person and longed for companionship and felt so much loss. And I don't know, maybe I identified with that story more. I don't know, man. He's a true one of a kind, and he'll even admit to like being influenced by Kniff and people like that. And there's obviously, you and I know there's nothing wrong with influence as long as you learn from it and don't just copy. And Frank obviously is not copying anything that I can tell. But I miss these guys or girls. I don't care about the gender or whatever. Creators that they're not trying to impress people. They're trying to validate something inside them.
Right.
Like if they don't get it out of them, they're going to die. And that's what Sin City feels like to me. I have to tell it's like it erupts from the marrow in your bones. You just sit there and the shit's just coming out of you. You got to let it out of you.
Yep.
And when that happens, and the synergy of creator motivation, the marketplace acceptability, when all those things kind of come together, it's magic happens. And
he's an auteur. I mean, he's like any.
There you go.
He's like any great filmmaker, auteur filmmaker, like a Tarantino.
There you go. Yeah, same thing.
Everything you see on that screen is beamed directly out of Tarantino's brain. And
with no original filter. He's getting the story out, and then everything else happens, which is rare. And I don't know, and I know a lot of motherfucking creators, guy. I don't know many people that do that. I mean, I haven't been in many meetings in my career where money didn't come up as, you can pretend what you want, but that's, especially in entertainment, that's the main thrust.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate thrust. When everything else is done, can we market this? Can we make money? And that's why we're in a commercial art field, ultimately. But within that commercial art field, greatness can happen. And Frank Miller's been the master of that. Mignola's been the master of that. There's just a few people that have figured it the fuck out, whether intentionally or not.
It's some people, I'm a Celtics fan. Like Larry Bird, didn't go to an Ivy League school, but he's very basketball smart.
Yeah.
I've listened to interviews with Larry Bird where he's talking about games from over 30 years ago, and he can tell you play by play, tick by tick, who had the ball, who was looking at whom, all of that.
Insanity, man.
He's just got. Anyway, he was actually a great coach too. After he was a basketball player.
He was. He went to the finals a couple times, right?
If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, he'd have a couple extra rings. And so, he's basketball smart. There are some guys who are just comic book smart. Like you put a pen in their hand and they can just project an unbelievable story onto a page. Mignola's a guy like that, a singular talent. Frank Miller, for sure, is at the top of that. Kirby, Byrne, Simonson, there's a club of guys. Alan Moore, even though he didn't actually draw, he could write stories that, I love Dave Gibbons, but Jerry Ordway could have drawn Watchmen. There are a lot of people who could have drawn Watchmen and it would still have been, the hit that it was. The same goes for pretty much, you could say almost the same thing for any Alan Moore comic book that ever came out. Turns out, Alan Davis was supposed to draw Promethea.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
that would have been wild, huh?
It was great that it went to J.H. Williams. I think he's a genius.
And his design work for it was unparalleled. It's Jesus Christ what that guy did.
I don't even know what Alan Davis would have done with that. I'm sure it would have been beautiful and brilliant, but Williams really took it to another level. That was bananas.
I agree. That was one of the books I always looked forward to. You read forwards and backwards. I've always liked those books, that there's more there than you could possibly imagine.
Well, Alan Moore will give you that every time. Alan Moore layers his comic books to the. I think it was Rick Veitch, or no, I think it was Rick Veitch who said he used to have a lot of long phone conversations with Alan Moore on the phone about Swamp Thing or whatever. They just happened to be friends, and they did a lot of work together. And he said that Alan Moore basically told him the story of Watchmen panel for panel, like they were on the phone for hours one day, and he basically described the entire Watchmen book, the entire 12 issues from beginning to end on the phone, long before it ever got into Dave Gibbons' hands.
That's wild.
That's how crazy his brain was.
Well, if you read his scripts, they read like that too. And all these greats, they kind of have their own way of doing things. And holy shit, does he? And it must be in his mind, because he's one of these writers that will send you like 1 or 2 pages at a time.
Yeah.
Script, like an artist. Here you go. It's like, it's, but then again, in the end, it comes out. I know when I was working for Mignola here this last time, I was driving him crazy because, and you might know this a little bit, but I kind of do the entire book in my head before I even draw page 1.
Yep. And
then I only thumb out each scene. I don't commit to the entire book or issue or whatever. And for multiple reasons, we can go into another time why my progress and why I developed that way. But Mignola would go fucking asshole crazy with me. And he'd have like 3 different emotions all within one conversation. Of it was almost like he was impressed, but he was annoyed, and he had no clue what I was doing. And we had to talk about it. And he just eventually said, "You just do what you do and turn in the pages, and that's what you get." but I can't. My books turn out really shitty when I do the traditional layout, the whole fucking thing, and then one page, they get really stiff. And I have a weird brain. It's very visual. And in my head, I can have an entire story done visually, scene for scene, for the most part. Not like I have Asperger's or one of those spectrum things that kind of give you sometimes an interesting brain ability to like recall imagery exactly. It's nothing like that. It's more like I know I have to get to the moon. If I take off here and vector directly at the moon, it's going to get me close enough to when I get closer to the moon, I can re-vector again and land perfectly. And that's just kind of how I work. And it's interesting that, and by no means am I fucking saying this, but like people like Alan Moore, a lot of these greats seem to have worked like that too. So I always find that interesting that, well, you told that story, and please, people, I'm not comparing. I have nothing but contrast when it comes to the greatness of Alan Moore. I'm just finding it interesting that I create a very similar way where it's because it's in my head, it seems segmented to other people because I have to go back and build the pieces for what's in my head, but you can't see what's in my fucking head. And, you know, obviously in certain projects, I couldn't do that, like working with multimedia, say film or video game or whatever. You got to adjust. But for comic books, man, that's my fucking bag, man. I really know what I'm doing, and it's hard to explain to people sometimes. So even when I'm around greatness like Frank or Mike Mignola, it drives them fucking insane. So I can only imagine if a writer's doing the same thing to people that have to publish books and or create off of that. That was a long-winded, shitty story of what I was trying to get out.
I mean, Tom Strong's another one. I mean, like, boys, Sprouse brought so much. I mean, I could look at Chris Sprouse drawings. I have some Chris Sprouse art at my house because I just love him so much. But there's another one. Like, a lot of guys could have drawn, and actually they did. You know, there were Gary Frank drew a few issues.
Well, if they had what I loved about Tom Strong is how they brought in other creators. They'd tell like a backstory in time of Tom Strong, just the short. Yep. And how brilliant was that?
Oh, I loved it.
Whoever thought of that device gets extra piece of cake today.
But when it didn't feel like the real Tom Strong until Sprouse came back. And
correct.
I'm like that. Now that boy, the final issue they had of that might be the only comic book that ever brought a tear to my eye, because it was the end of that whole world where they sort of crossed over with Promethea.
Yeah, and then like blew it up, right?
And it was painted, like instead of using the regular flat coloring that they had been doing, that particular issue was sort of had a watercolor painting sort of a thing done to it.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of the issue. I was like, oh, somebody's cutting onions in here. I go, oh, don't mind me.
All these pesky allergies.
But I loved those. They were just such great comics. You know what I mean? They weren't trying to be anything pretentious. They were just fun, you know, superhero comics.
Yeah. It kind of, man, that was a good series. I hate saying this. It feels like there's no magic left in comics, man.
Once in a while, I got my favorite comic that's out that is still a semi-regular comic is Saga.
Well, that's a good fucking book, right? A lot of talent happening in that book.
They've been on hiatus, I think, for 2 years, and everybody's going bananas, you know, in all of the, you know, everybody's mad at the artist. Everybody's mad at the writer. I'm like, listen, you don't know. Her name's Fiona Staples, the artist. She's wonderful.
Very nice lady, too. Very nice.
She's really nice. And it's like, she just had a baby. You don't know what's going on in her life. If she doesn't want to, if she's not ready to come back to drawing comic books because she's got a baby on her arm or a couple babies, or maybe she's got elderly parents, or maybe she's busy, or maybe she just doesn't feel like it. I don't know. But either way, she's not your art. It's not your job to tell her what to do. When she's ready to come back, she'll come back, and I'll be here.
What comic book fans not appreciating that talent has lives and shit like that, and they have feelings and they get tired, and
it's this entitlement thing, man. I don't want to get too, you know.
Yeah, we don't need to bash on But it is, isn't it? It's 100% entitlement.
And I think Frank would agree with me. I'm sure Frank would agree with me.
I agree too.
He's had some quotes to that extent that I'm not going to get into. But
well, there's good fans, bad fans, but lots of times when people want something so bad, and this is a small spectrum of that. I remember with Wild Blue Yonder, I had to have liver fucking surgery because of the chemo I was on.
Yeah.
Put me 3 months behind on like issue 3 or 4. Which kind of, I worked my dick off. Didn't even have a family, no dogs, no nothing while I finished that series. In the middle of production chaos, publishers lying, all this shit like that, creatives fighting, it was madness.
You could smell the liver on the pages.
I'm sicker than shit. I worked my ass off to get this series done, and then I get fucking hate mail. You're not a professional. I'm not a professional. I had a knife wound in my body, and I'm out on the fucking.
I'm barely alive, and I'm still drawing your comic book.
And that kind of made me bitter a little bit. And I know that's not everyone, but there's too many of those motherfuckers in American comic books. You go over to Europe, they just want a good book. When's it coming out? Okay, I'll be looking for it. And when it comes out, it's going to be a masterpiece, so I'll wait. Americans, man, for the most part, it's just this fast food mentality. Now, I want more. Give me fries. I want a bacon double cheeseburger. I want this. I want that. I want fucking The Bachelorette. I want YouTube. I want Jesus Christ. Calm down, people. I got to create this shit. I not only have to create it, I have to create it while creators are fighting, while IDW is trying to fucking do shenanigans in the background because they knew this was a popular. It's just one of those titles that had a buzz, and everybody smelled money on it, and I learned a lot about fans, about Hollywood, about publishing houses, about shitty personalities and how to navigate them while still creating your highest level work and then you get people that just take, like I write online, you're not a professional, you're a piece of shit, Zach. I'm going to find you at a con, I'm going to rip your fucking artwork up. Had that dude write me.
Wow.
And then I fucking wrote back. Of course, this is before I learned the internet. I was like, hey, motherfucker, you come find me. You come, I was all this shit like that. And then he like posted my response on like some fucking aliens forum. And I just come off like a piece of shit. I'm like, the guy threatened to destroy my livelihood because I'm slow. Fuck, I'm like, what the fuck?
It's wild. Like, we've got Renetta runs agency artwork over there, and she sells a lot of art on that website.
Renetta, yes. There's no other art dealer that gives less of a shit about you. I love her.
Yeah, Renetta's fantastic in her own way, but the mail that if a piece of artwork took longer than a week to send out, the emails and the texts and the what's taking so long? Why did there's a snowstorm on Thursday and it lasted through Friday, and then we're not going to get the stuff out until people are just. I learned to be patient at a pretty young age.
You're a master of it too, admirable level, and I've told you that before because you've seen me handle shit.
Yeah, I am as patient as they come. You got a 3-hour layover in Chicago? That's fine with me.
Yeah.
I am more than happy to sit in the chair for 3 hours. I don't speed in my car. When I drive very slowly. Why? Because I'm already sitting down. And where am I driving? I'm driving somewhere else to go sit down. So what's the difference? All I'm going to be doing is that's life, is just going from room to room and sitting.
Well, that's society. That was the military as a kid. Hurry up and wait. Got to get a new ID. You got to be here at 8 a.m. And you get your ID at like 5 in the afternoon. You've just been sitting in a chair playing with your nuts.
You're always going to be sitting. Like I'm sitting in the airport yesterday. I was in Dallas or something, or in Austin. No, I think it was I was in Austin. No, Dallas. So I'm sitting in Dallas. I got a 3-hour layover. I'm like, this is fine. I could sit, all I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here for a while, then I'm going to sit on a plane, then I'm going to sit in a car, then I'm going to sit in a house.
So healthy, dude.
I'm just going to be sitting.
Then you just see me, who I do sit for a living, And I have no patience for fuckery, for incompetence, for anything.
No.
Unless people take personal responsibility, then I got a well of patience for you. Because you're a diamond in the rough, motherfucker, if you have personal a sense of personal responsibility and accountability.
It's so, dude, I got some stories to tell you offline about some guys that I work with that are just so entitled. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Like they've ruined their career just feeling entitled and feeling put upon because they're being asked to work.
Get that a lot in our industry too. And, I think when you're young, we all deal with that a little.
Yeah.
But that's part of being a fucking adult, right?
Yep.
Placing yourself in objective reality in a smart, intelligent way that everyone can flourish, including yourself.
Ooh, you gave Miho quite the little scowl there. I like it.
Yeah, I made her pissed off.
That's her default bitch face, I think, the resting bitch face.
Yeah, that's her relaxed.
I like the actress that they chose for her in the film.
Pretty well cast, right?
Yeah, really well cast.
There are there are shiny gems in that movie. Overall, though, I guess I just, I just fucking love the book so much. It's going to be almost impossible to please me,
Oh, I totally know. I know where you're coming from.
Let me put some white splatter on this motherfucker. We'll put this episode to print. Well, shit. Oh, yeah, this is what I was going to do.
I thought you were going to draw on a butt crack. Just before we go, I was talking to Larry Stroman.
Oh, cool.
And he draws comics out of order I think he draws the first couple pages, then the last couple pages, then the middle. I can't remember the exact order, but he never draws a comic book in sequence.
There's people like that. Don Kramer, who used to draw Justice League, he'd go do all the he'd mix in the shitty pages in with the pages he wanted to do. So sometimes he'd go to a splash page, and I can't work like that. I have to literally do page 1, then page 2, then page 3. Otherwise, I don't like the storytelling how it turns out. But I think people that do the jump around thing, I'll probably piss people off. It's less about storytelling and more about execution, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I no kidding. That's probably why. It's probably just more practical.
It really is more practical and motivation. It's grueling drawing a comic book. So if you have, 8 assholes walking through a mall having a conversation, you're not going to want to draw that. No one is going to want to draw that. So you got to kind of mix that in sometimes. I don't. I just gruel through it because I'm a big dumb asshole. But you'll see a lot of dudes jump around, and I'm sure the ladies do too. But ladies are usually smarter than guys, so who knows?
And everybody's going digital now anyway. So
everyone. So that's one thing I like. I swear my original art's worth more now because I'm one of the only fucking dummies that still does it.
No, you're smart to do it. I mean, that you've got magic hands here with the inks. So
I'm the magic man with the magic hands. All we need is a heart song about that, and we're good to go, right?
I'll call up the sisters.
You do that. They need work anyways.
One of them's touring solo right now. Seriously.
What, is she just left ventricle then?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is how I entertain myself, assholes.
Yeah.
I'm by myself.
The other one's touring is aorta. The other one's left ventricle.
Descending aorta and left ventricle.
Yeah. They split.
Well, I will put in my signature, but I gotta put in Frank Miller's here, which I'll do off air. But
Zach, can you hit us up with this week's Patreons?
I absolutely can. We got a lot of great people here joining to win free artwork and sketchbooks and blah, 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 and take part in the show. So here we go. No particular order. We got Scott Buon, William DeGeest.
Hey, Will.
Anthony Digi, who has the most Italian name ever. Di Leonardo. Say that 400 times. DiGelonardo, but just call him Digi. He's my buddy anyways. Andrew Jackson Brown.
Great singer.
Philip Jean-Pierre, one of my longtime fans. Great guy. From Spain, we have Olga Macia. Sorry, she laughs because I get it wrong every time. So sorry, Olga. I'm a big, giant, stupid white man. Kurt Kroll. This is Kroll 3 now. Yep. He's really having success with that. Thanks for bring your Cyclops buddy next time, Kurt. Steve McKay, thanks for joining. Patrick McNerney. And I believe this is all. We may have had a new Patreon or two, but I haven't gotten a new updated list yet. So if you're not on this list, you will be next episode. Yell at me and I'll give you a shout out online too. So there we go, man. Thank you, Patreons. You guys rock. I think I spit on the camera and you're welcome.
Thank you, Zach. Peace out. We'll see you next time.